Pooh Shiesty, one of the hottest rappers to come out of Memphis in the last 5 years, is reportedly in critical condition after being jumped by Crips inside a federal prison. And bro, this goes way deeper than just that, because this is not some random fight. This is about loyalty, street politics, and what really happens when you're a famous rapper locked inside a federal facility thinking your name is going to protect you. Spoiler alert, it does not. So buckle up, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what happened to Pooh Shiesty, why it happened, and why this is honestly one of the craziest stories to come out of the rap world this year. Let's get into it. But before we dive in, let me set the scene real quick, because some of y'all might not know who Pooh Shiesty is and why this story matters. Trust me, once I lay the foundation, everything else is going to hit way harder. Pay attention. Pooh Shiesty, real name Lontrell Dennell Williams Jr., is a rapper from Memphis, Tennessee. Born November 8th, 2000, this man was literally 20 years old when he blew up. Most of us at 20 are figuring out lunch. This dude was already going platinum. He signed with Gucci Mane's 1017 Records and came out swinging hard. His debut mixtape, Shiesty Season, dropped in January 2021, and bro, that thing was a monster. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200. Number 4 with a mixtape, not an album, a free project, and it still charted in the top 5 nationally. Then he dropped Back in Blood with Lil Durk, and that record went certified platinum multiple times over. The boy was on fire. And then just like that, it all came crashing down. In October 2021, Pooh Shiesty pleaded guilty to a federal charge of conspiracy to commit robbery. The situation stemmed from a 2020 incident where Pooh Shiesty and some associates allegedly robbed 2 men at a hotel in Bay Harbor Islands, Florida. During that robbery, one of the victims got shot. I'm not here to make jokes about that a man got shot, and that is not funny, but it was serious enough for federal charges to get involved. And once the feds are involved, you already know how that goes. In August 2022, Pooh Shiesty was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in federal prison. In the federal system, you typically serve 85% of your sentence. There is no early release for good behavior, like in state prison. So he's looking at serving the vast majority of that time. He was sent to a low-security federal correctional institution, which at the time seemed okay. At least it's not somewhere super violent. You all are not ready for what happened next, because this is where the story goes from a rapper going to jail to something genuinely disturbing on a whole different level. Reports started coming out that Pooh Shiesty was not having an easy time in prison. Now on the surface that might sound obvious. It's prison, nobody's having a good time. But it goes deeper than that. Because Pooh Shiesty is a famous rapper. He's got millions of followers, certified platinum records, and money. You'd think that kind of name recognition would give you at least some level of protection, right? Like, people know who you are, they respect the music, maybe you get a pass. No cap, that is not how federal prison works. Not even close. In federal prison, your reputation on the outside means virtually nothing. What matters is where you're from, what sex you claim, what your affiliation's on the inside, and whether you're willing to hold your ground when things get physical. Street politics don't pause just because someone went platinum. If anything, being famous makes you a target, because now you're somebody other people want to make a name off of. You're a trophy, and that is an incredibly dangerous position to be in. Now, let me break down the specific incident, because this is the part everyone's talking about, and I want to get it right, because there's been a lot of misinformation floating around. According to multiple sources, Pooh Shiesty was involved in a serious altercation inside the federal facility where he's being housed. And we're not talking about a little scuffle in the yard. We're talking about a coordinated jump. Multiple people reportedly affiliated with the Crips attacked him at once. And during that altercation, Pooh Shiesty reportedly suffered significant injuries, including, and this is a part that went absolutely viral, getting a tooth knocked completely out. A tooth was knocked out. Bro. Now look, I know people online were making jokes about this, and I get it. The internet is the internet. But when you really sit with what that means, a tooth knocked out tells you the level of violence in that fight was severe. You do not knock someone's tooth out with a light punch. That is serious blunt force trauma to the face. That means Pooh Shiesty took some real damage in that fight, and the reports of him being in critical condition, which is what caused the story to explode, suggest the injuries went way beyond just a tooth. We are talking about a situation serious enough that there was genuine concern for this man's life. That is actually insane when you think about it. But before I get into the full breakdown of what went down and why, you need to understand prison gang politics, because without that context, you won't fully understand why Crips specifically would be targeting Pooh Shiesty. And this is where it gets really deep. Pooh Shiesty is from Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis has its own gang culture that is very distinct from Los Angeles, Chicago, or any other major city. Memphis street culture is heavily rooted in homegrown sets and affiliations that developed independently, and this is crucial. When Memphis artists blow up and their music reaches a national audience, they inevitably get associated with certain gang affiliations, whether they're explicitly claiming them or not. Pooh Shiesty has been publicly associated with the Bloods, specifically through artists and people in his circle who rep blood sets. And when you enter federal prison, you are navigating a completely different ecosystem because federal prisons house people from everywhere. You might be from Memphis, but now you're locked up with people from Compton, South Central, Chicago, and New York, and every single one of them brought their affiliations with them. So when you have a prominent figure associated with a blood-affiliated circle walking into a facility with a significant Crip population, that is a recipe for exactly the kind of conflict that reportedly happened to Pooh Shiesty. This is not random. This is not senseless. In the world of prison gang politics, this is almost, and I hate to say it, almost inevitable. The streets don't stay outside when the door closes. Are y'all seeing how deep this goes? And here's where it gets insane on another level. Because there's a question a lot of people have been asking, and it's a legitimate one. Why doesn't Pooh Shiesty just go into PC? For those who don't know, PC stand for Protective Custody. It's a separate housing unit where inmates who are at risk get separated from the general population. And on paper, that sounds like the obvious solution, right? Famous rapper at risk, just go into PC and you're safe. But here's the thing. In prison culture, going into PC carries a massive stigma. We're talking about one of the most socially damaging moves you can make in that environment. Requesting protective custody is seen as an admission that you cannot handle yourself in the general population. It's seen as weakness. And once you're labeled as someone who ran to PC, that label follows you even after you get out. On the streets, people will say you checked in. They'll say you couldn't hold your own. And for someone like Pooh Shiesty, someone who built his entire image around being authentic, around coming from the streets, around being a real deal, going into PC will be seen as the ultimate contradiction of everything he's put out into the world. His music, his persona, his whole brand is built on being solid. And in street culture and prison culture, those two worlds are not as separate as people on the outside think. A decision made inside can absolutely destroy your credibility when you walk back out those doors. So Pooh Shiesty is stuck in an impossible position. Asking for protection would cost him his reputation and credibility, things directly tied to his career and his standing. But not asking for protection means staying in a situation where he is clearly at risk of serious physical harm. Bro, that is honestly one of the most heartbreaking dilemmas I've thought about in a long time. No cap. Now let's talk about what daily life in federal prison actually looks like for Pooh Shiesty. Because a lot of people have this Hollywood idea of what it's like being a celebrity behind bars. And the reality is so different from that. First of all, he does not have his own cell. He does not have special accommodations. He does not get better food or a nicer bunk because he has platinum records. In a low-security federal facility, you're in a dormitory-style setting. Open bays, multiple people, very little privacy. You're living in extremely close quarters with people from different backgrounds, different affiliations, and different regions of the country. Now, some people might think, okay, but at least people are going to show him love because of his music, right? Like, at least he can bond with people over the music. And yes, to some degree, name recognition can open doors. People know who you are. Some people respect the art. But that cuts both ways because some people want to test you because of who you are. Some people want to see if the image matches reality. Some people want to take something from you, whether that's money, commissary, or clout, just because you're somebody. And then there's a financial element. People know Pooh Shiesty has money on the outside. Even though you can't access outside money directly in prison, it's understood that someone like him can have money put on his books by people on the outside. And that makes you a target in a completely different way, because people will try to tax you. They'll try to extort you. Give me commissary or else. And for someone with resources, refusing to pay can escalate into exactly the kind of violent situation that Pooh Shiesty reportedly found himself in. So get this, being rich and famous in prison might actually make your situation more dangerous, not less. Are we surprised? Because honestly, I kind of am and kind of aren't at the same time. Now let me talk about the mental side of this, because I think this gets overlooked way too much when we discuss incarcerated artists. What happened to Pooh Shiesty physically is obviously serious, but what is happening to him mentally? This is a man in his early 20s who went from being one of the hottest artists in the country, performing at festivals, recording in studios, traveling, living that life, to being locked inside a federal correctional institution for years. And while he's in there, the music world keeps spinning. New artists are emerging. People who are coming up at the same time as Pooh Shiesty are continuing to build their careers, drop projects, and go on tours. And he's watching all of that from the inside with extremely limited communication and no ability to participate. That is psychologically brutal in a way most of us cannot fully comprehend. And now, on top of all that psychological weight, on top of the separation from his family, his freedom, and his career, he's dealing with physical violence. He's dealing with the constant threat of danger. He's dealing with the reality that in that environment, even if something happens to him, the response from staff might be slow or completely inadequate, because that is another hard truth about federal prison. The staff-to-inmate ratio is not good. Guards cannot be everywhere at all times. And when something goes down in a yard or a dorm, it can escalate fast before anyone steps in. This is where it gets serious for real. This is not entertainment anymore. This is a human being in a genuinely dangerous situation. So, what is actually being done about it? What is the Bureau of Prisons doing to protect Pooh Shiesty? That is a question his legal team and his family are almost certainly demanding answers to, and it is a question that deserves a real answer. Here is a frustrating reality. The Bureau of Prisons are notoriously secretive about what happens inside their facilities. They do not issue press releases when an inmate gets jumped. They do not hold press conferences about yard altercations. Information leaks out through other inmates, through legal communications, and through family members piecing together what's happening from limited phone calls and visitations. What we do know is that when a serious incident occurs, something significant enough to leave someone in critical condition, there are supposed to be protocols. There's supposed to be a medical evaluation, documentation, and a full investigation. The inmate who was attacked is supposed to receive proper medical care, and there are supposed to be real consequences for the people who carried out the attack. But here is where the system fails people, famous and not famous alike, over and over again. Because in federal prison, even when attacks happen, even when people get seriously hurt, the institutional response is often slow, often inadequate, and often does not address the root cause of the conflict. You can investigate an attack after the fact all you want, but if the conditions that led to that attack have not changed, if the same people are still in the same facility, if the underlying gang politics have not been addressed, and if the target is still in the general population, then you are just setting the stage for the next incident. And that is the most terrifying part of this entire situation. Because if Pooh Shiesty refuses PC and the facility does not take serious steps to address his safety, the question is not whether something else could happen. The question is when. No cap, that is something that genuinely keeps me up at night. Now I want to address something directly because there are people online saying things like he made his choices, he knew what that life was about, and this is what happens when you live that lifestyle. And look, I get it. I understand that perspective. The choices Pooh Shiesty made that led to him being in federal prison are not debatable. He pleaded guilty. He acknowledged what he did. There are no ifs or buts about that. But here is what I need y'all to understand, and this is important. So really listen. The fact that someone made mistakes and is serving time for those mistakes does not mean they deserve to be beaten, to have their teeth knocked out, or to be left critically injured inside a prison facility. The legal system sentenced Pooh Shiesty to time. The legal system did not sentence him to being jumped by a group of people and left in critical condition. Those are two very different things. And beyond just Pooh Shiesty specifically, this story is a window into the broader reality of what happens inside American federal prisons. The gang politics, the violence, the impossible choices between safety and reputation. The way the system is structured in ways that almost guarantee conflict rather than rehabilitation. This is happening to thousands of people who are not famous rappers, people whose names you will never know, people who don't have social media accounts amplifying their stories. And that is something worth really thinking about. The conditions that led to what happened to Pooh Shiesty are the same conditions thousands of incarcerated people are navigating right now in facilities across this country. Y'all sitting with that? Now let me talk about something else that has been coming up in online conversations. People have pointed out that Pooh Shiesty, given his profile, his 1017 Records connection, and Gucci Mane's background, had people expecting him to carry himself a certain way in prison. Expectations were coming from multiple directions. From one side, people who respect his music and his image expected him to hold his ground, stay solid, and represent properly. From the other side, people actively wanted to test that image to see if the real Pooh Shiesty matched his own records.